Welcome to the Salish Sea Fellowship Sunday afternoon service from August 25th. You can check out more details on our website, salishseafellowship.org, and we hope to see you in person some Sunday afternoon. Thanks for listening.
And this is the blessing. May the blessing of light be on you, light without and light within. May the blessed sunlight shine on you like the great peat fire, so that the stranger and the friend may come and warm himself at it. And may light shine out of your two eyes, like a candle set in the window of a house, bidding the wanderer come in out of the storm. And now, may this day bless you, and bless you kindly. The reading for today is taken from the Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot. So here I am in the middle way, having had 20 years largely wasted, the years between the wars, trying to use words in every attempt is a wholly new start and a different kind of failure, because one has only learnt to get the better of words for the things one no longer has to say, or the way in which one is no longer disposed to say it. And so each venture is a new beginning, a raid on the inarticulate with shabby equipment always deteriorating in the general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion. And what there is to conquer by strength and submission has already been discovered once or twice or several times by men whom one cannot hope to emulate. But there is no competition. There is only the fight to recover what has been lost and found and lost again and again, and now under conditions that seem unpropitious, but perhaps neither gain nor loss. For us, there is only the trying. The rest is not our business. I'd like to invite Ron Strange, please, to come forward to introduce the speaker for today.
Hello all. This is a distinct honor to be able to introduce someone who's feels like my lost brother, who we've just rediscovered each other, Todd Eklof. You may know of him, but I'll tell you a little bit more. We've had a chance here the last 2 days to take a couple of walks and compare notes on life and talk about our individual paths. And so I'm really we are developing a bond. Reverend Eklof holds a degree, undergraduate degrees in philosophy and communications, a master's degree in religious studies, and a doctorate of ministry, and has been nationally recognized for his activism. This is much better. In areas of nationally recognized ministry, has been nationally recognized for his activism. Glasses do help. In the areas of peace and justice, LGBTQ rights, and the marriage equality, the environment, restorative justice, and criminal justice reform. He's been the senior pastor at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Spokane since 2011, and he has also created the NAUA, the North American Unitarian Association, which is dedicated to supporting and promoting the practice of liberal religion by embracing freedom, reason, and tolerance. A button which I proudly wear every week here. It's rooted in our commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of every person and all peoples. So in our talks, we talked about John Denver also, who happens to be important to him in his words. And as a prelude to his talk today, some themes are going home, belonging, and believing in yourself. And it made me think of, take me home, country road, to the place I belong. He will speak to some of this, and afterwards you'll have special entertainment when I get to read again. Please welcome Todd. Reverend Todd Eklof.
Thank you so much, Ron. Yeah, so it's not on the schedule, but after, he did add that he's going to do a reading here. It's in Pat. All right, good, okay. So, hi. Thank you all for having me and for being here. Wow, you look great. It's a good group of people here, and it's been so good to be here for the weekend. I actually got in Friday, and so thanks to Ron and Judy for hosting me in such a beautiful home, and I've enjoyed walking through the woods and seeing the giant brown slugs and the smells and the ferns and all that. It's just been great. And also seeing some old friends. I've been here before, and seeing some folks I've met. Seeing some old friends for the first time, really, who I've only met on Zoom. And then, of course, seeing a lot of folks I haven't yet met. And looking forward to getting to know you better and all of that. So thanks so much for having me. I did think a lot about, what sort of message would be appropriate for you during my visit. And I think I really wanted to, I called this New Beginnings without really knowing what I would emphasize, because I think that's probably where you're at right now. So, I want to begin really with the story of a 2-year-old Scotch collie named Bobby. How many of you have heard of Bobby's story? Probably 3 of you have. Yeah, one, 2. Okay, it's good. If you will, I'll tell it to you so you don't have to guess. So this was in the summer of 1923. Bobby, who was from Silverton, Oregon, got separated from his human family while they were visiting relatives in Walcott, Indiana. Bobby was chased by 3 dogs while they were at a gas stop and ran away in fear. And after an exhaustive search, the heartbroken family had to give up and return home without their beloved canine companion, knowing that they had likely lost him forever. But only 6 months later, Bobby returned home, completely on his own, exhausted, dirty, emaciated, after traveling more than 2,500 miles, crossing the Rockies, the Great Continental Divide, and the Cascades in the dead of winter to get there. And you can go there today. They have a big museum you can go in and read about Bobby's incredible story. And when his remarkable story spread, Bobby quickly became an international celebrity, which resulted in thousands of letters, including from some who had encountered him, even cared for him along the way during his arduous journey. And this made it possible to actually trace his path, which showed that he'd taken the most direct route home, with only a few detours. As one newspaper said, something marvelous roused in Bobby's brain, and roused to his need, and guided him on the long trail as surely as Polaris guides the mariner. Marvelous as whatever his North Star was, Bobby's ability isn't as unusual as it might sound. Lots of animals, if you think about it, demonstrate what we call homing or honing abilities. In his 1947 classic Adventures with a Texas Naturalist, did you know they had nature in Texas? I've lived there, I never saw it. Not true, I don't want to pick on my Texas friends. But anyway, Roy Bedichek, the great naturalist, wrote about relocating some of the deer that had become problematic in the Aransas National Wildlife Refuge near Corpus Christi. In the spring of 1942, for example, a doe was captured and she was taken 90 miles from the refuge, only to have returned and get trapped again 21 days later. In the spring of 1944, he says a 6-point buck was transported 400 miles away. But the following fall, the same buck was also captured again at the refuge. He also tells the story of a fawn that was relocated almost 390 miles from the refuge to a place it could never have been before, only to show up again 2 weeks later, just a few yards from its original capture. We've all heard of homing pigeons, but many kinds of creatures, fish, insects, reptiles, in addition to birds and mammals, have demonstrated this remarkable ability to find their way home, taking a direct beeline. There's a reason we call it a beeline, right? They wander out to places they've never been. They find a source of food and zip right straight back in the straightest line they can to their hive. These animals, these creatures make a beeline, a home to home across distances, great distances sometimes, which they've never been before. There's every reason to believe that us humans also have this instinct, even though we've come to increasingly rely upon our maps and our GPSs. Perhaps this is why some of us, especially men, don't like asking for directions, which feels like cheating. It reminds me of a scene in an excellent movie in 1997, Black Robe. How many of you saw Black Robe? It's kind of one of those artsy movies that a lot of people haven't seen. It's a great film. It's about a Jesuit priest who's being guided through the American wilderness by a group of Indians. And at one point, he wanders too far from camp, realizes that he's lost, and begins to panic, running around about frantically until he bumps right smack into the chest of one of his guides. Greatly relieved, the priest says, "I thought I was lost." The Indians laugh at the absurdity. How can anyone get lost in the forest? To many of us Unitarians, today we might feel a little lost too, as if we've been relocated. Some of us literally. Like those of you here at the new Salish Sea Fellowship. There, I'm not going to say it 3 times. Here in Port Townsend, beautiful Port Townsend, as well as the Open Hearts and Minds Fellowship in Austin, Texas, and the NAUA Fellowship in Hayward, California, as well as those who've simply left their congregations because they've become unrecognizable or been kicked out for saying some things that some might disagree with. We've been forced out or removed from our refuge, be it from the local church community that we once belonged to, supported, and loved, or from the Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists everywhere. How did we get here? What is this lonely, unfamiliar place? Where do we go from here? How do we get there? I'm sure Bobby also felt scared, lost, and alone. Yet as long and as difficult as his journey was, Bobby knew where he was going. Like most animals, he had a homing instinct, an internal map or GPS to guide him back home. Still, it was far from easy. His journey was long and perilous, and he had no way of knowing if he was even heading in the right direction or not, if he'd ever even get there. As determined as he was, he must have felt anxious and unsure every moment along the way. The Tao Te Ching says, "The way objectified is nebulous and blurred." So it is with our journey home. Back to familiarity, to friendship and tolerance, to sanity. We feel unsure about the direction we're taking. Is this the right way to go? Am I really heading home? It feels like I might be, but I still feel lost. Maybe this isn't the way. Is starting a new Unitarian association the answer? It feels like an overwhelming task. Is it really going to get me home? Is starting a new fellowship in Port Townsend the answer? Is leaving the church many of us built with our own hands and hearts the answer? Is doing so really going to get us back to where we want to be? We're not sure. The path is nebulous and blurred. We can't see past the mountains, the great divides, the cascades, the harsh winters, and the endless miles before us. There's another story, a fictional one, about the ancient Hebrews trying to find their way home to a place they'd never been before, to the promised land filled with milk and honey. It took them 40 years wandering through the desert, always feeling lost and uncertain. Their only guides, the story goes, were the clouds by day and a pillar of fire by night. The ancient philosopher Heraclitus chose fire as a symbol of constant change. And another word for cloud is nebula. The path is nebulous and blurred. Like fire, it's always changing, twisting, and turning with lots of ups and downs along the way. Yet it is this is the same arduous path that Bobby took and finally got home. It is the path that the salmon risking death to annually return to their spawning ground, their place of origin, take. It is the path millions of monarch butterflies take each year, fluttering from Canada to the forest of central Mexico against many odds, all of them upon a route which they've never traveled before. And it is the path a handful of Unitarians near the Salish Sea have now embarked upon, like other Unitarians elsewhere, struggling to find home. And that's how we get there. Our knowledge of what it feels like to be home. To be with those we love and who include us and accept us as we are. Home is a place where we are free to think and speak for ourselves. It's a place of support and warmth and laughter and friendship and kindness where we need not think alike to love alike. It is a place, as the renowned Unitarian Universalist Jack Mendelson wrote in 1964, where the most fundamental of all principles is personal freedom of religious belief, the principle of the free mind, where no holy writ dictates, no creed dictates what must be believed, where an agnostic may sit beside one who believes in a personal God, and during the after-service coffee hour, a believer in reincarnation may stand chatting with one who affirms utter extinction. Such are the diversities in theological belief. When for us, religious liberals, for a congregation, no matter how near or far, ceases to be these things, it is no longer our home. We feel homeless and lost within it. When this happens, the way forward may be nebulous and blurred, but the one thing we are certain of is that we are no longer at home, because this is not what home is supposed to feel like. And that is the understanding that will eventually bring us back to where we long to be. Feeling lost was part of Bobby's guidance system. I may not know exactly where home is, he may have thought, in whatever way dogs think. But I know this isn't it. And so he kept moving and searching until he could again feel what he'd known at the start of his life. The familiarity, the warmth, the happiness, the companionship, the love. The spawning salmon know this longing, as do the butterflies and the wild geese. And if there's any truth to the old myth, so did the Hebrew people. I know where I'm supposed to be, and this strange place isn't it. That's the homing instinct. Knowing what home is supposed to be, then going through whatever it takes to get there. But other than knowing where we belong, where we're supposed to be, how do we find our way home? As with Bobby and spawning salmon and so many other creatures, the long journey begins by remembering where we are from. What does it mean, especially for us religious liberals, to be at home? I wrote my controversial 2019 book, The Gadfly Papers, because I was increasingly feeling uncomfortable with the growing culture of unreason and intolerance among Unitarian Universalists, the very antithesis of what we are supposed to be about, the antithesis of what it was once meant to be at home among UUs. In Gadfly, after outlining some of the unfamiliar and foreign behavior that left me at a loss, that left me lost, I look back to find the breadcrumbs that will lead me back home again, beginning with the 1961 merger of Unitarianism with Universalism. And by the way, I have nothing against either of these religions. I consider myself a Unitarian, but I'm not blaming either of these religions for what happened. But what happened is, instead of being an association of Unitarians and Universalists, wonderful. Let's be an association of Unitarians and Universalists and Methodists, and Unitarian and Universalists and Methodists and Muslims. Right? It's great to associate with people who are different. But instead of being an association of Unitarian and Universalist, as it was meant to be, we suddenly became Unitarian Universalist. A new religion that nobody had ever or has ever been able to fully define until just this past June, when the UU Association defined what they now say real UUs believe in. 7 ill-defined euphemisms centered around the nebulous word love. But none of the new words, nice as they might be, reflect our ancient commitment to human dignity, to individual freedom, to reason or democracy, or above all, tolerating and accepting our differences. Those words aren't there anymore. Prior to the 1961 merger, Unitarians and Universalists knew what their two separate religions were about. They had some similarities, but also some major differences, 2 major differences, theology and class. Those are pretty big differences. You need to get those worked out before you become the same thing, you would think. And I contend that in order to avoid conflict over these major differences, unresolved major differences, and a potential split, we quit talking about our past, including our historic roots and values. Instead of being an association of Unitarians and Universalists working together, we were all suddenly labeled Unitarian Universalists, a religion that had never existed before and that religious scholars today refer to as an NRM, a new religious movement, despite its 2 namesakes dating back hundreds of years. By not talking about our differences, we quit talking about our historic roots and our historic values, and that's how we got lost. By not remembering where we are from. Some think they have arrived at a new and wonderfully delicious gingerbread home, and don't mind that the crows have eaten their trail of breadcrumbs that lead to the house back home. But they will eventually learn that at best, the gingerbread house is full of empty calories. And at worst, that it is inhabited by a wicked old witch who wants to enslave and bake them into pies. I don't know where to go with that metaphor. So we'll leave it at that. My point here is that, of course we are at a loss. Of course we are at a loss and feel abandoned because our religion is no longer the same place. As I write in Gadfly, Unitarianism has become the silent partner in this relationship, pressured by the fear of being publicly shamed for saying anything others might deem harmful or dangerous, or has simply been quietly ignored, uninvited, or disinvited by the UUA's unwritten policies under the guise of institutional change. Unitarians must now keep their values, the values closest to their hearts, quietly to themselves: freedom of conscience, reason, the recognition of our common humanity. I also say that this has led to the displacement of universalism by the emerging culture of safetyism, political correctness, and identitarianism, and that universalism has died and been displaced by a grotesque impostor. Quite simply, Unitarian Universalism is no longer our home. For as I've already suggested, the 63-year struggle to define Unitarian Universalism was finally completed just a couple months ago during the UUA's annual General Assembly, resulting in the complete overhaul of its principles. Now we know at last what Unitarian Universalism is, which oddly no longer bears any resemblance to either Unitarianism or Universalism, nor most significantly to the values and principles deeply embedded within our centuries-old liberal religious traditions. Now, rather than worrying about the future of the UUA, it's time to start dwelling on the past. Because paradoxically, it is our rich history that will guide us forward and return us to that place of meaning and belonging, of friendship and acceptance, to a place of familiarity that we call home. I know, for example, the recent removal of those 7 principles from its bylaws was disappointing, but going back just 40 years to 1985, when they were first adopted, that isn't far enough. That's not going to take us home. Nor is going back to the merger in 1961, when there were just 6 principles in its bylaws that had human dignity at the bottom of the list and contained nothing about the interdependent web of existence. It's not far enough. To understand where we come from, we have to go all the way back to the early Greek philosophers 2,600 years ago. The first thinkers we know of who attempted to explain the world in natural rather than supernatural terms. It was their brilliance that inspired the Renaissance thinkers, right? Their renewed interest was in the pre-Socratics. The Renaissance thinkers who led us finally out of the Dark Age and gave birth to Eastern European Unitarianism, the first religion ever to pass religious toleration law in 1568. That's where we go back to. That's our deep roots. The Edict of Torda. And it was such tolerance, along with a commitment to reason and freedom, that led to the Enlightenment a century later, and with it the birth of Western Unitarianism, particularly here in the U.S. Yet I want to emphasize that my interest in our past is not a nostalgic longing for the fictional good old days. Santayana, the philosopher George Santayana, famously said, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." You've heard this, I'm sure. So we must look to the past in order to better determine our way forward. As an old Taoist proverb says, if one dwells on the past, then one robs the present. But if one ignores the past, one may rob the future. The seeds of our destiny are nurtured by the roots of our past. Even better yet is the saying from the renowned scientist and inventor, Dr. Emmett Brown. "Marty, you've got to come back with me. Back to the future." All right. Serious theologian here. I once heard Matthew Fox, for those who've known the great theologian Matthew Fox, a fellow heretic, an acquaintance of mine, a teacher of mine. I once heard Matthew say, "The spirits of our ancestors are not behind us, but before us, calling us forward." This is the sense with which we must regard the past as a guide for moving forward. Liberalism's first principle is human dignity, going all the way back to the early philosophers who believed enough in their own agency and their own ability to reason to try to figure things out. We don't need the gods. We don't need the myths. We can use our own senses and our own sense to begin to make sense of the world. Nothing like it had ever happened before. And the Renaissance thinkers loved this about them and were inspired because of it to undertake what they called the Studia Humanitatis, the study of all the writings of humanity, not just those of one religion. It was groundbreaking. As the philosopher Susan Neiman says, Enlightenment thinkers insisted that everyone, whether Christian or Confucian, Parisian or Persian, is endowed with innate dignity that demands respect. During the Enlightenment, such dignity was defined as Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, right? You know this one, that nobody should be considered a means to somebody else's ends, but should be considered an end within themselves. And that was reformulated during the French Revolution as the more familiar phrase that's gone into a lot of democratic constitutions, is our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That is the categorical imperative. That is the humanistic ethic. And this dignity is maintained by establishing systems and societies that promote freedom and reason and tolerance. I mean, you think about it, right? How can somebody have dignity if they're not free? How can somebody have dignity if we don't allow them to think for themselves and trust their innate ability to reason, whether we agree with them or not? And that's why, in order to maintain dignity, the bare minimum is we have to tolerate each other. We don't have to love each other. We don't have to agree with each other. We don't even have to move next door to each other. But we have to tolerate each other, and that means making sure that everyone, whether we agree with them or not, has the same rights and the same protections and the same access to social benefits that we have. That's a tolerant society. That's how human dignity is maintained. And these are the breadcrumbs that will lead us home, not to the home of the past, but to the kind of home, the kind of community, the kind of world that we want to build for ourselves and for humankind. Understanding this rich history, our deep and ancient roots, is vital if we truly want to find our way home. But now I want to spend just the last few minutes here looking back at a few of the breadcrumbs, the newer breadcrumbs, that led more specifically to liberal religion here in Port Townsend and to your Salish Sea Fellowship. It began in 1976 when a handful of individuals gathered together in a living room, not unlike those of you who gathered around a kitchen table just a few years ago enjoying grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. You met then to talk about how you can restore familiarity. Familiarity. It also contains the root of family. Familiarity and sanity to the church that you helped build with your own hands, your own hearts. A place of community that you love and feel a deep and personal connection to. A place you watched and helped grow from a tiny group of friends to one of the largest UU congregations in the region. A place where like-minded people could engage in lively discussions on philosophical topics with no worry of being silenced or ostracized. And it turns out there are a lot of people in Port Townsend who want to be part of that kind of home. I propose that what they were then and remain most attracted to is your respect for individual worth and dignity. Such dignity was uniquely expressed here as your very own version of the Studio Humanitatis, which you named ALPS, the Adult Learning Program. In developing and maintaining this incredible program, you promoted human dignity by uplifting human creativity, human artistry, human intelligence, human curiosity, human agency, and human joy. This is the gift that you brought to your church and to this community. Something Port Townsend still needs and wants and can only get from you. They are lost without it. Lost without you. You are the place that they want to come home to. And that, my dear and admirable Salish Sea Fellowship friends, is your path home. Your way back to the future. Your larger community still wants and needs what you have to offer. If they can no longer find it at the old place, they will come to where they can. For home is not a specific place or building, no matter how much sweat equity and fond memories we may have put into building it. It wasn't the building that made it your home, but the building of it together that made it feel like home. It wasn't dwelling within it that made it home, but experiencing the support, warmth, laughter, friendship, kindness, among others gathered within its walls, others who did not require you to think alike, to love alike. Home is where our worth and dignity is cherished. Home is where our worth and dignity is cherished. And where we find the freedom to think and to speak and to be ourselves. Home is where we love and support and encourage each other. A place of openness and inclusion, not fear and condemnation. That's the magic. That's the magic that brought Bobby home after his impossible journey in 1924. It's the magic that guides the salmon and the geese and the butterflies. It's the magic of knowing where we come from and what we're about. It's the magic that guarantees we'll always find our way home, no matter where the future leads, nor what we must endure to get there. So don't be discouraged by whatever versions of the Rockies and the Continental Divide or the Cascades stand before you. You know the way. You've got this. You're almost home. Thank you.
Well, that's tough to follow. So, we'll let John Denver follow that. Coming Home was a song that he wrote just, I think, 3 weeks before he died. And Todd, this was special for him, so he asked me to do it, and I have to enact a wolf, so I hope you're ready for that. Awoo! That's the way it starts. Oh, the Yellowstone. Oh, the buffalo free. Oh, my brother the wolf, my lover the moon. Oh, the little one. Oh, the joy that I felt. Oh, the love in my heart and a wilderness song. Oh, oh, the waterfall. Oh, the river that runs. Oh, my brother, the wind, my sister, the sea. Oh, the ocean shore. Oh, the castles of stone. Oh, the mountaintop calling to me. Oh, returning, forever returning, coming home, belonging, forever belonging, never alone. Oh, the mystery, oh, the dreaming of dreams, oh, the brother, my own, my sister, my own, oh, the tenderness, oh, the longing for love, oh, the beautiful way, the sweet coming home. Oh, coming home. Oh.
We extinguish this flame, but not the loving joy of being freely together. We carry that joy until we meet again.